Hello, viewers. Now we are continuing with episode 2 of paper 2, English KCSE. We started with question 1. I told you about the comprehension. We went to question 2. I told you about the exact question. Now, let's move on to question 3. Now, question 3 is still on literature, but this time round, it's not a set book that you'll be reading, like what I told you in question 2, or even a novel that you'll be reading. It's poetry. Sometimes you can be tested. If you're a good guesser, try to see the trend, the KCSE trend, but sometimes don't be too rigid. I told you in question 2 you can be sure of either it's a play you'll be tested or a novel you'll be tested. But in this question, question 3, read widely, practice poetry. This is a comprehension paper. The poetry that you'll be tested there is in-depth. Expects you to have extensive knowledge of ideas of poetry, extensive knowledge of circumstances, different tone, different mood, attitude. The persona is tested. Who is the persona? Being a comprehension paper, recite that poem slowly, recite it over and over again, go to the questions, see what the questions need you to find out, and then when now you go back to the poem, it seems easier when you're reading the second time. Because it's a comprehension paper, make sure that you pay attention to the way the lines have been brought out. If there's a title in that poem, do not overlook it, because poetry has a way of passing a message. It can be a plain message, it can be an ironic message, ironical, it can be a symbolic message, poems that have hidden meaning. Make sure that you have been reading a lot. Maybe I can give you examples of poems that have ever been tested. For example, there's a poem in paper 2, 2022, When We Were Young. That title there, pay attention to the title. It can be a plain title. It can be a symbolic title. For example, there's a poem called The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. It could have a literal meaning, like someone is walking on a road, is walking and then he finds two roads. One has been used severally and another one has not been used. So it is the road not taken. Literally, there's a person on a journey walking in a place where he finds a junction and he has to take one road. Also, in that poem, it could have a hidden meaning. It could have a meaning of maybe life is symbolic, whereas you're living life, as you make decisions, there are people who make very popular decisions, and everyone has been making this kind of decision. And the other one, this decision that you want to make, no one has made that decision. So in that poem, it can have two meanings. So when you're looking into poems, make sure that you know. Also, you can have poems that are ironic. Unless you read the whole of the message, that's when you'll know. For example, there's a poem called He's a Jolly Good Boss. But when you go to the next line, it talks of a jolly good boss that sits behind a shiny mahogany desk like an overfed python that has just swallowed a bearded hiccup. Really, if he's a jolly good boss, then you would not use such words on a good boss. When he has been described as a jolly good boss, if you don't pay attention to the tone, you may misunderstand the whole of that poem. So when you're reading poetry, pay attention to the way that message is passed. You could also pay attention to titles. Titles are very important. If the poem says, a leopard lives in a mole tree, think of that, because there could be a hidden message of not really a leopard, but someone that has been invading this homestead. That poem by Jonathan Carriara. Expose yourself to as many poems as possible. Even had Lewin's poem Touch, when he talks of touch, which kind of touch does he talk about? When he says, when I get out, I'm going to ask someone to touch me slowly. So, which kind of this touch that he's talking about? Because sometimes he says, I've learned the meaning of touched, untouchable. I have been out of touch. So, touch gives you different meanings. So, when you're looking into this question, be open minded and look at the message in that. Take poetry as a whole literature message that you need to get from the beginning to the end. Which are some of the questions that you expect in in this question? That is question 3. You could be asked, what is the meaning of this poem? Who is the persona? Even what are the traits? What are the character traits? What is the attitude, tone, mood? What is the meaning of the given phrase? And many other questions. Now, you could be still in this question, you could have an oral literature question. Question like Questions like oral narratives. Do you know this kind of narratives? Do you know there are different types of narratives? The ones you covered from Form 1, the first uh, narrative that you covered in Form 1, a trickster narrative. Did you know that it could appear in the KCSE? When you have a trickster narrative, what are the characteristics of such narratives? You could be asked a myth, a legend, a theological narrative, a fable, just to name but a few, because we have different types of narratives. Even dilemma, go to Form 3, Excelling in English, Book 3, and you'll find a very interesting dilemma of a young lady that is being followed by so many suitors, and now there's this short, wobbly man that makes her laugh because her problem is that she couldn't laugh, only for him to easily tickle her, and she laughs and laughs. So she's in a dilemma. Go through that work and you'll encounter as many narratives as possible because narratives are tested. Now, there's a difference between a song and a poem because songs are found in oral literature, not just any kind of a song that is tested here. We are talking of oral literature. We are not talking of the pop songs that we listen to out there. Remember, it is the Kenya National Examination Council guideline, and you have to adhere to those uh, rules and regulations. So, study types of songs, their functions. Where does the performers present this kind of songs? Because we have, if you were to look at birth songs, lullabies, war songs, wedding songs. A few years ago, there was a wedding song that was tested saying, listen, dear sister, from this day, you won't go to the dance. So when you find a lot of repetition, most likely because there'll be no examiner who will come to the exam room and now start presenting the work, you'll know, okay, this one has characteristics of a song and it is not a poem. You can also be tested on that. You can be tested on the structure of the song because songs have different structures. Like when you use a refrain, how does it function? Which style does the maybe the singer use to pass the message? Style is tested, themes are tested. You could be asked an economic activity, mention an activity. Who are these people? What do they do in their lives according to the community? How do they view certain issues? Because those questions are from that song or from that piece of work that you've been given. Now, let's go to question 4. Question 4 is grammar. I told you in the previous video, the question when I was referring to question 1 and 2, remember there's something I told you of grammar. Although we are looking at grammar that is 15 marks here, grammar is a wide range of topics. Make sure that you know the parts of speech. Do you know pronouns? Can you give me an example of a pronoun? Maybe I can give you. And then you will tell me whether you know other pronouns. There are personal pronouns, reflexive pronouns. Do you know there is a case in pronouns that is done in Form 3? This is tested. Types of nouns, we have what you call the noun derivations, where you're supposed to form words from maybe nouns from words that you have been given. This is all tested in this grammar question. Now, still in grammar, you have to know the parts of speech. As I had mentioned, I had given you examples of pronouns. I had also given you examples of how you would work with the nouns. Remember, in still parts of speech, you know the examples of adjectives, use of adjectives that you covered in Form 1, order of adjectives, because that is also tested. Articles are also tested in last year's paper. There is a where you're supposed to fill the blank with article a or the, depending on the way that sentence sounds. You could also be asked to remove ambiguity in a word. Do you know that a sentence can have different meanings? If, for example, you say he came in an Uber, for example, what does that mean? He came with Uber, or what does that mean? So it gives you an opportunity to express yourself and avoid ambiguity. You can also be given instructions. Begin with the following words. That means you'll be given instructions, stick to the instructions. You're also given questions on question tags. Make sure that you rewrite the whole of the question, and now include the comma where there's supposed to be a comma. Use a small letter where there's supposed to be a small letter, a question mark where it should appear, because that is what grammar is all about. You cannot prove that you know grammar when you don't know how to use punctuation marks. Make sure you know how to use punctuation marks. You know how to use your handwriting, because it is very important and crucial in this question. The examiner looks at your way of expression. If you keep confusing small s and capital S, small l and capital L, those small errors can cost you a big deal of marks. Also, there is a problem with students who are not able to get meanings of idiomatic expressions, because this one is also tested. In grammar, you must know meanings of idioms. And remember, idiomatic expressions do not have uh, an obvious meaning. I know previously, last year, we were making fun of use of hot air, the red herring, but did you know the meaning? Because you remember in that context, if you say, for example, coming up with an idea, it was like flogging a dead horse. What is the meaning of that? You don't know the literal meaning, that means you must know that idiomatic expressions have a certain way, have a certain meaning. Still in this question, know the meanings of different phrasal verbs, because also phrasal verbs do not have literal meaning. If I say, I cannot put up with him, does that mean that's literally putting up? No. Meaning that maybe I cannot tolerate, or he looks, he takes after. If I say she takes after her grandmother, not literally taking after. So you have to know the use of also the phrasal verbs and many more. Grammar is a wide topic. Pay attention to a lot of information that you'll be given in those classes and here in my channel. I'll also encourage you to keep following, because I'll be giving you more and more tips. If you have not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button, share widely so that people know what we are doing. These are English lessons for free. So if you've been paying for English lessons, you are sure to be dealing with a qualified teacher of English who is generous with her information. Maybe I can give you some homework. List what you have learned today. At least make a list. Did you learn anything from this video? Anything, even if anything that you didn't know and say, Madam, at least that one I didn't know, but now I know. In the previous video, the one that we did in question 1 and question 2, make sure you're able to connect, because paper 2 does not survive on only question 3 and 4. There's a video we did previously that talks about question 1, that is the comprehension, and the excerpt. So connect all this information. Be on the lookout. I'll be dropping another video soon of paper 3. We started with paper 1. Here we are systematic. We are not disorganized.